Welcome. Welcome everybody here today. Great to have you here on a Friday evening in Rotterdam, in the Willem Burgerzaal in the Doelen. It's an honor to have you. Take a seat. We're talking about changing the rules of migration tonight. Maybe you were also in the round table already. We talked already a little bit about changing the rules of migration, but now we have a wonderful plenary session with wonderful speakers as well. This is one of a series of debates and discussions that the Socialists and Democrats group of the European Parliament is organizing, and this is all in the context of the conference on the future of Europe. And among others, they have conference plenaries, European citizen panels, they have a multilingual digital platform, and also events like this. So good to have you here to hear what you think on the future of migration. Also welcome at home if you're watching through the live stream. My name is Eveline van Rijswijk. I'm a political historian and your moderator this evening. So tonight will revolve around the future of migration. And in the first part, we will be looking at the European perspective of the future of migration. And in the second part, we will look at the national and local level. And some of you have headsets, so enjoy the translation. I'm wondering how I sound in translation. So welcome. Let's enjoy this evening together. So this is kind of an unofficial welcome, but we also have official welcomes. They're always the best. And I would like to introduce the first person who will give you an official welcome today. And her name is Sarah Rijtema. And she is a Rotterdam Council member of the PvdA. Give her a very warm hand.
Yeah, welcome to Rotterdam, the most beautiful and interesting city in the Netherlands. I was waiting for this response, very good. Yeah, we are a very creative and agile city, and at this point we also have a cruise ship with 1,400 refugees from Ukraine, and I'm very proud. I'm very proud of our city, and I'm very proud to be serving the city as a city council member. My name is Sarah Rijtema, as I've been introduced, of course, and in the city council I represent our social democratic values for the Labour Party, the PvdA, Partij van de Arbeid. And I wondered who is here in Rotterdam for the very first time? Quite a few. And probably you expected a very typical Dutch scenery with the old houses and the water in the front, like the pictures you see of Amsterdam. Maybe you expected that, but unfortunately our city was bombed in May 1940 during the Second World War. And the whole city turned into ashes almost completely. And the Doelen, the building we're standing in here now, was also bombed. But it has also been rebuilt. And that is also the nature of Rotterdam and its people. We have a very hands-on mentality. And we know we can change. And we know we can rebuild a city after war. We are a resilient people. And now again, we have a war on our continent. But actually we have war all the time, all over the world. And we always have people that are forced to flee their precious homes. And tonight we are here in this special city, in a special location, to rethink about the changing the rules on migration. So what can we do and what is needed? I actually also said it in the round table before. The character of law itself, rules, regulation, is that it's actually always outdated. It's always behind reality. It's never completely up to date, but that's inevitable. But the international system, that's really outdated. And you can even argue that the system is broken. But together we can rebuild it. And tonight we can think about how to do that. And The reality, and so how to challenge this rethinking of the system of rules and also asylum and migration. And the reality is that we have a transnational world. We go through borders. That is for the internet, of course, but also for family relations, for education, expats, work, but also for the refugees, also for those cross-border movements. The system does not really fit. So, how can we change? I think it's very important, and I'm also trying to bring that into the City Council, to always self-reflect, and especially to step away from ego games. Be critical, be vulnerable, admit that your view is not perfect, and listen to the other. And most of all, dare to be human. And I'd like to end my welcoming speech with a lesson we have learned from a very special refugee, Hannah Arendt. She was a Jew, an intellectual that had to flee and survived during the Second World War. And from all the evil and horror she has seen, she asked herself, what can we learn from this, what happened? And what we can learn is the following: to love the world so much that we believe change is possible and that we never give up hope. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Sarah Reitema, for your wonderful welcoming words. And we have to listen to each other. It's also a message I'm taking home. And you're even more lucky because we have a second welcome message. There's someone else who likes to welcome you today here, and that's the President of the Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament, Irache Garcia Perez. Sorry for the pronunciation. Unfortunately, she's not able to join us today, but she has made a wonderful video message for you. So a second, or actually a third welcome by Irache. She can hear it. If you can do it louder. Irache Garcia Perez. So now, after welcoming you 3 times, I think it's ready to start. And we have a wonderful keynote speaker. She is with us remotely from Madrid, so we'll have a connection with her. Her name is Ana Terón Cusi. She's the former Spanish Secretary of State for Migration, Director of FIIAPP, FIAP, and chair of the FEPS Global Migration Group. And I will give the floor to her so she can share her vision with you on the future of migration. And afterwards, yay, you're already there, you can ask questions, and also the people who are sitting at home. Anna, can you hear us? We can't hear you yet.
Yes.
Yes, welcome.
Yes, I can hear you, and I think that now you can hear me.
That's great.
Hello.
Welcome, Anna, here with us in Rotterdam. I will now give the floor to you so you can share your vision on the future of migration. And afterwards, we have some questions for you. And I would say, let's give her a warm hand.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. The first thing I want to say is that I'm so sorry not to be here together with you. Among my husband, before being Secretary of State for Migration in the Spanish government, I was member of this socialist group in the European Parliament. I was there for 2 terms. And for more than 1 term, I was coordinator in LIBE. So I really feel part of the family and part of the people of this group who's been thinking on migration for a long, long while now. So it's my really pleasure to be here with you. Hope next time we can do that together. I mean, in person. I would like to talk to you today as a practitioner. First of all, as a practitioner in politics, in migration politics and European politics, and as a practitioner in migration policies. And the first thing I want to address is why migration rules are so difficult to change, so difficult. The first thing I would like to say is that migration is not only about facts. Migration in politics, it's a mixed thing between facts and symbolic issues and narrative. Migrants, and that's one of the reasons for that, are for sure human beings. But migrants in our society are not constituents. Irrespectively of their origin, those who are constituents are not migrants, but newcomers and asylum seekers, and those who seek for labor and migration or for refugee are just the silent subjects of our public policies. They are, again, not constituents. They can be used in different ways. They can be used as a threat to our societies. I very well remember, still remember, how injustice and Home Affairs ministers, a Council of Ministers, a paper was circulated, a paper talking about Tunisia events, I mean the Arab Spring, with the first line saying, events in Tunisia are a threat to Europe. And some of us were astonished and asked a little bit like, please, we asked for a first sentence saying that we were in favor of democracy. But just to picture how this can be shown as a threat, and showing it as a threat allows foreign or third countries to use that as a weapon, the so-called weaponization of migration. It can be portrayed as an opportunity it can be both, and it can be portrayed in many, many other different ways. But facts are rarely the basis for the picture we have on migration. That means that we have visible and invisible migration. For instance, in Spain, we have a number of migrants coming to the Canary Islands and coming from the neighboring African coasts. And probably I have no need to explain to you what is this about, because you've been thousands of pictures and you've read thousands of papers and news on that. But I can tell you that the same year before COVID, that 30,000 people from these neighboring coasts of Africa arrived to Spain. Almost 200,000 arrived to Spanish airports coming from Venezuela. And probably you know very few about that. There are visible migrants which are used to make the portrait we have of migration, and invisible migrants. What is and that not to talk on the 30,000 migrants we have from the Great Britain. We have 800,000 Moroccans, but we have 300,000 Brits, and they are never portrayed as migrants. Once I asked a minister of Home Affairs of Great Britain, after he was very long talking about Spanish migrants in Great Britain, European migrants in Great Britain, how he would call these 300,000 Brits in Spain, and he told me expats. Well, yes, you can portray them as expats, but they create we have generational issues with them. We have health providing issues, but anyway, no one considers them migrants. Those are sort of invisible migrants. At the end of the day, what we can say is that for us and for the mainstream portrait of migration, migrants are those who are poor. No one considers Neymar or a professional football player, even if they come from Africa or Latin America, a migrant, and those who can be racialized. And we will be back to that. Having said that, we cannot be astonished that migration policies are based on a lot of guessing. What to do with migrants, what to do with this silent subject is full of guessing, is full of assumptions, which are not very much checked, and which are not very much backed by real facts, studies, and by real methodology to create public policy. At the EU level, we can say that we have not such a policy. If we go back to the 99, to the last year of the last century, and we will do twice, what we see is that labor migration, we had to be in the focus of what that first European Council devoted to migration was looking for, is not told there. What we have at EU level is a sort of myriad of directives focused on rather small and healthy groups: blue card, research, students, cross-border migration, not circular migration. We do not have to mix that, but we still do not have legal, common, or at least convergent path for labor migrants, which are the vast majority of migrants in Europe. In the new Migration Pact, this is again announced, but if you notice that it's at the end and it's not at all fixed. They say, we will present something on legal path for migration, but it's still the big hole in our legislation. If we go over and we move into the international arena and the international management of migration, yes, we do have a lot of communications, papers, and a lot of space of this new migration pact used to talk about fighting root causes of migration. Fine. Those root causes of migration, we assume, and indeed the Global Compact mentioned many of them, we assume that is to put them in the big box, poverty. The least we can say is that assessing that poverty is the driver for migration and that we must fight root causes of migration and then turn our heads to the civil society, to NGOs, to governments, to whoever, and say, let's go, let's fight poverty to fight at least non 100% voluntary migration is a very poor public policy. It's really a very poor public policy. Imagine if we do so with our constituents. Imagine that we say, let's fight root causes of bad performance at the school. And then we turn our heads and say, well, we can do something. Who can do something? We can do something. Who can bring us some ideas to doing that? Probably we would not be the most popular government, and we would not produce very, very useful public policy on that field. But that's what we do with migration. Indeed, we are going to spend 10% of the Global Europe funds in doing so. We have. I really would like to ask you to be attentive of that, because behind that there is again a lot of guessing. What we can do with 10% is less obvious. The big word here, it's remittances. Okay, remittances are important. Migrants are the drivers of development in their countries and in our countries. But again, facts also say us that remittances are, for instance, a poverty trap of migrants in Europe. The big issues we have with poverty and with integration in our land is poverty, yes, because they are the people who are getting the lower incomes, and they use the half of that incomes to try to bug their families at home. So all these kind of policies need, we think, twice on what we do and what are the effects here and there. We will also go back to this. On asylum, okay, violence is obviously the main driver for refugee seeking and for sudden avenues of refugees. This is not the place, yes?
Yes, can you round up? So we can ask you some questions. Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah, some last remarks?
I will end in 2 minutes.
Oh, great. Yeah.
We had this tool, 2001 Temporary Protection Directive, never implemented. Why 20 years? Well, because before this avenue of asylum seekers, they were poor and racialized. What are the two things I would say to change migration policy? Well, first of all, go to data, go to facts, and base our policies on that. But I would like also to see three things on the current EU legislation for that. First of all, do not let this legislation only in the hands of the Justice and Home Affairs Council. This is not only about police. Second, defend the US model, the EU model. Yes to Schengen, yes to the social model here and abroad. And third thing I would like to say is that Moria cannot be the rule. We can have a different asylum system, and now we are learning by doing how this better asylum system can be. Last sentence, that asylum system, I would say that have to have two steps. One, to decide that refugees can be accepted and protected in our EU land, and second, decide who is going to really protect, what country is going to really protect that very person. And that's the end. Sorry.
Thank you.
It's a broad issue
No,
to
it is,
address in 10 minutes,
it's very difficult
that's
to.
what I wanted
Yeah,
to say.
but
Thank you very much.
You mentioned, thank you. You gave us some wonderful recommendations, I guess. So I would like to ask you, audience, if you have some questions for Anna. And there's someone walking around with a microphone. So if you have a question for Anna on her recommendations, on her vision on the future of Europe, the vision on migration in Europe, raise your hand, and then we can ask Anna the question. Who has a question? Yes, I think, yeah? There's someone coming with a microphone. And also mention your name, please.
Thank you. My name is Boris from Pufflin. You started your keynote speech by saying that refugees are not a sort of recognized constituency. I think well, I'll keep it short. Is there any way to sort of develop the political voice or even political power of refugees within the European Union or nationally?
Thank you. Good question. Anna?
Well, I think that sorry, I hear me twice. Well, and it's.
I think we can do something about that.
Difficult. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah?
I did. Can you hear me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
No. Okay.
Yes.
No problem. Well, I think that should be our job. I mean, it's very difficult for refugees who are not considered citizens with the right of vote, etc., to be taken into consideration when we do public policies, when we do something to welcome them. What I do think we can learn now with our fellows from Ukraine is how to increase the community welcoming of refugees. Probably the more we have people engaged in the welcoming, the more we have people really active in refugee welcoming and in refugee assistance, we will have bigger constituencies for them to be present in our societies. Yes, we can help them, but we should also build up this community, this more community system to welcome and to protect them.
So it's an informal. My microphone, yeah, an informal solution. Can you hear me? Instead of, yeah, now you can hear me. It's kind of an informal solution and not a formal solution.
I mean, I would also say something else, which is less formal. I do think that the family of the fellows and the family of the security and foreign affairs would have to put in their thoughts, let's do that, and in their policies, asylum and refugee, and the effects on people of violence at all levels. I mean, when we discuss security issues, we scarcely think on victims. We think on power games. I think that we formally should include the effects on people and the effects on people mobility of this of the security plans. And I think that this is something to be done by our security family and for the European External Service action system.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, here and there. Also mention your name.
Hello. Hello, my name is Konstantinos Dekabalas from Athens, Greece. Thank you for being with us here today. So I will keep it short. There are many kinds of immigration, like labor immigration maybe, or war immigration. What about climate immigration, climate refugees? There are places on Earth that the sea levels are rising or they're becoming desert, and the climate crisis is affecting negatively people living there. And they would like, they are already immigrating, and more of them are going to immigrate in the future. So as European Union, as Europe, how prepared are we for that? Yeah. Thank you.
It's a good and very challenging question. Anna.
Well, I think that we have to be better prepared for climate change mitigation. But the point is that this kind of migration, it's really linked to other issues. I mean, climate migrants will come especially for those areas of the world in which we have a mix of poverty, problems of health care, other kind of issues in food security, etc. So I sorry for that. There are still phones in homes that sometimes they ring.
That can happen.
It's not my mobile. It was my.
It's
phone.
okay.
Sorry. And I think that it will not be easy to focus on climate change migration if we separe it with from other kind of drivers. Okay, but yes, we have to work for climate change mitigation, and we have to know that this will be a driver. But the driver will be linked, as I said, with other reasons. So yes, we have to work abroad, but we have to really create public policies to spend this 10% of global Europe funds in trying to prevent forced migration.
Thank you, Anna. I think I'll leave it here. I think there are still many questions, but we still have a wonderful plenary session going ahead. So, Anna, thank you very much for your keynote. Thank you also for the recommendations you gave. I saw many people writing down your recommendations, so I think they'll work on it for sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Once again.
If you allow me to say 2 words more,
yes.
There is I didn't want to jump into that, but I want to say decent work. It's also a recommendation abroad and in EU to try to manage better migration.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. I was not 100% comfortable for technical reasons, but I hope it was well.
I don't know if you can hear it, but they're giving you a warm hand, so thank you very much. Anna.
Thank you, same to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you for the questions here from the audience. We're going to go to the feedback from the roundtable. Some of you were in the roundtable, others were not. So we're going to have like a short feedback session from the roundtable. And also there's an opportunity, of course, to ask some questions. We have a special guest as well who already introduced himself. I'm going to first introduce the members of the European Parliament, Mark Angel and Niels Usherkovs. Welcome. Take a seat. We had a wonderful round table with them, and they will share some of their insights, and also on the rest of the Conference of Europe. They've been touring together for quite some time right now, right? So they can share some insights. And our special guest, you already heard him asking a question. He is Konstantinos Dekavalas, but he pronounces it better. And he won the online competition for comments on the Progressives for Europe platform. Take a seat. And he's a councilman in the city of Athens. Welcome to Rotterdam. Take a seat. Yeah, you can all sit there. I can sit in the middle.
Yes, this is for you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's start with the round table session. I think you can, it's now one hour later, right? You can.
Yes.
You thought about it, you know, what were the insights you had from the round table discussion? Who can I start with? Did you decide already? I think
this time
Niels.
I start.
Oh, this time you start, yes, Mark.
So the roundtable was really good, and I felt like I was in the middle of the conference on the future of Europe in one of the working groups, because the citizens which were taking part of this roundtable, there was a good mix in age, but there was a good mix also Dutch people and people with migration background, and we had really a good discussion. There was also academics in it, and it was for me like I felt, okay, I'm in the middle. This is part of the conference on the future of Europe. So that's my first remark, and we had it very well structured. We had 2 questions. The first question, what is the most challenging in migration? And then a lot of the people said the narrative is very important. And Anna also talked about this narrative, these false facts, this disinformation, and the language is very important. We have to talk, we shouldn't talk about burden sharing, but we should talk about responsibility sharing. We shouldn't talk about illegal migration, it's irregular migration. When it comes to borders, I prefer border control than border protection. Protection is like we have to protect from something. No, if we want to manage migration, and we have to control at borders, but not this protection. So the narrative is very important, and I really like that Anna said that a lot of policies are just based on false facts and assumptions, and this was also came out in this roundtable.
Yeah,
and
words
then,
like threats.
Yes,
and so
yes.
on. Yeah.
And then what is challenging also, one member said the housing problem is a problem too, not only for migrants but also for the whole population now in Europe. So that was mentioned, and I thought it was really good. Then of course. Some participants were worried about the role of Frontex, and therefore it's important that Frontex, that there's more transparency, more accountability. All this, we discussed that. And then we also discussed, and then also the question of trafficking women and children. And we see that now in Berlin or in other places, not only in Germany, but in a lot of places now with trafficking of women and children, when there is this huge amount of people fleeing their country. So there's these risks. And these were the challenges we discussed, but we also discussed the second question you asked. She was an excellent moderator, by the way. And the second question you asked were about the solutions. And Sarah, she mentioned the system is broken. We have to make the system fit again. And also somebody said there's only one ticket booth to come to Europe, it's Asylum, that we need to have legal pathways. And again, we rejoin what Anna said. We need to have legal pathways. And my experience in the conference on the future of Europe with the citizens recommendations, they have 5 very strong recommendations that Europe has to strengthen legal migration. I think this is quite important. We also talked, of course, about fighting the root causes, and we had a discussion, is development policy enough or not? And it is proven that it's not always the case. And I thought one very interesting remark was that one of the solutions could be nation building in third countries, nation buildings. And the example of Rwanda was given, a country which was destroyed by this horrible genocide, but now there's a strong will of nation building, and this country is doing quite well in Africa, and it can be a role model. So this concept of nation building, rule of law, is something which keeps people, which is important too. And then we also again said that it's very important to talk about migration, educate our citizens about migration, and this is also what we learned in the working group of migration in the framework of the conference on the future of Europe, that we need to talk about migrations, about the benefits of it, also challenges. And I think my last remark is, some far-right politicians make that migration is the biggest threat. And I'm so happy about the conference on the future of Europe, where we had this multilingual digital platform, where you saw that people are much more worried about inequalities, about poverty, about climate change, about digitalization. Yes, migration is important too, but it's not the biggest threat to the European citizens. And this is also a lesson we should learn from this conference on the future of Europe.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah. Niels, what are your insights?
Well, I will try to start with, if you allow me, quoting a Dutch proverb, which was translated into English during our roundtables, that unknown is unloved.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we have seen in my home country during last two crises. Last one, it was 6 months ago, because of Belarusian dictator Lukashenko sending refugees to Lithuania, Latvia and Poland. And we have seen Latvian border guards virtually pushing back people into the forest during the winter. Families, mothers with kids spending time probably without shelter, food and water. And now during Ukrainian crisis, what we see thousands of volunteers, we see millions of donations, we see sophisticated social support, including social services both from the state and municipalities for free. Last crisis was full of shame for me. This crisis makes me feeling proud for my country, and that means we have to use it to introduce wretched the fact that we are never going back again to the way we treated refugees coming to Europe previous years. And that's why we've been so excited with Mark going through proposals by the citizens, seeing that Europeans are in fact much more progressive than any politician would imagine himself. That's what we've seen during various panels and working groups during the Conference of Future of Europe. And one of the solutions I would like to focus on discussing today is that we need education, we need to fight with disinformation and fake news. We have to be straightforward, explaining to our societies pluses and minuses of migration and what's going on with refugees. And we need European level regulation and requirements, the way member states deal with migrants and refugees, and we need to provide also financing in order to help member states to meet these requirements. And when we talk about regulation, we have to, at the end of the day, make migration regular in general. Not legal or illegal, irregular or regular, it has to be regular in all possible cases.
Thank you,
I try to
Niels.
be short.
Yeah. So now we turn to you. You just arrived in the Netherlands, so welcome to Rotterdam, Konstantinos de Cavallas. So you participated in the online competition Progressives for Europe, in the platform. There's a lively discussion going on all these topics, right?
Yes.
So I would like to ask you if you could share your insights on what you experience in Greece and how you look at this topic.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being here with us today. I will share my experience from Greece. I will say 4 very quick points. I happen to be also elected as a local councilman in Athens, so I will share this experience. So, first and foremost, let's face it and let's agree that not everyone is pro-migration, especially in Greece and in other countries. There are people that are afraid, that they are skeptical, and we need to convince those people that there are many positive things that can come from this phenomenon. But first, we need to acknowledge that not everyone is by default pro.
Yeah.
That
Even though in the
situation.
Conference of Europe there were many people very positive on it.
Yes. Now, regarding the integration, how we can improve the integration of refugees. Unfortunately, the Greek government, the central right government, what they're planning is to put more and more refugees in refugee camps. We believe, and I also believe this is not the correct solution. The correct solution would be having refugees living with citizens, with locals, so there can be better integration, there can be better education, they can find easier working, and so this is the second point we should consider. Now, third point would be to have a fair share of responsibility. We need to rediscuss the Dublin Regulation. So under the Dublin Regulation, the first country that a refugee is arriving, the entry point country is the country that should accept and handle his request. Well, of course, that giving a lot of pressure to Greece and to Italy as entry points of Europe. So if we need to make solidarity happen, we should do a fairer share to all European countries, because not every country is thinking the same.
Yeah, redistribution of...
Yes, the redistribution, exactly. And last but not least, to close with that, we understand, of course, that nobody is putting their children on the water if the water is safer than the land. So we understand that people that wanting to emigrate to Europe, they do it because there are a lot of difficulties in their countries. However, not everything in Europe is perfect, and yeah, they need to know that before coming here. But most important, I think, is in order to understand all this refugee crisis, and we need also to discuss with refugees and with immigrants. We need to understand their input, what are their expectations, what are their wishes, and this is the best way to have a better solution for everyone and a fairer solution for everyone. So this is it, I would say. Thank you.
A quick response, maybe, by you on his insights?
You mentioned quite rightly revisiting the Dublin regulation, and this is also what the citizens ask in one of the recommendations, and always about a fair sharing, relocation, and a fair distribution. And when we talk about sharing of responsibility, some member states, I remember the Hungarian minister, he said, yes, I'm totally for fair sharing of responsibility, but we will pay then a little bit more for Frontex, or we will pay a bit more to protect the borders. But no, it's also receiving the people and integrating them. This is a fair sharing of responsibility, and this is what the citizens have recognized, and they really pushed a lot on that recommendation. And by the way, this recommendation of the European Citizen Panel was exactly the same as the recommendation of the Dutch citizen panels. And that's a remark I also wanted to make, is that we can see that the European Citizen Panel, where all people from 27 nations were, they matched what the French or what the Dutch said, because some conservative, very far-right politicians in the parliament, they argued, yes, this is these European citizens. In my country, it's totally different. And I was very happy then to take out the paper of the French citizen panel, where I said, listen, what the French citizens said is exactly that.
Yeah.
And that's also very interesting of this conference on the future of Europe.
And would they then say, well, it's not representative? Would they say that?
Well, they are scared. They are scared because their narrative is being destroyed. And now they try to find fake excuses. They say, oh, these citizens have been influenced. These citizens are not. This company who chose the citizens chose pro-European citizens. They really try to find narratives to say this conference is all nonsense, and because they're scared, because the citizens are. And we see it also. We see that often citizens are ahead of the legislation and ahead of what politicians think. Yeah. And that's why I am now such a big fan of this conference on the future of Europe, because we had these contacts and these discussions with the citizens from the 27 countries. And as I said, you must know that 1/3 of these citizens were young citizens. They had to be the age between 16 and 25. And this makes me hope that the coming generations are even more progressive than the people already are now.
Let's hope so. We have room for one question from the audience. Oh, and we have 2 questions.
Will not be discriminating.
Yes.
Then we'll have 2 questions. But then you have to give short answers.
Yes.
Who had a question?
There are 2 questions over there. He made the remark on the housing earlier in the...
I did, yes.
You did.
Housing.
Hi, Mark from Rotterdam, so I'm a local. Short question, short answer. What were your expectations going into these conferences, and were they met?
Niels, maybe you can... answer?
I will just repeat once again, I was truly surprised by the fact that proposals by citizens were so progressive.
Yeah.
Good.
Good, yeah. Okay, thank you, Mark,
Good
for your
indeed.
questions. Yes?
Hi, my name is Said. I'm from the youth faction of the Dutch Labour Party. Generally, the people who are most opposed to more liberal migration policies are the ones who don't consume mainstream media as much, so the more conservative societal groups. How would you say we can best reach out to those people to convince them of the need for more humane migration policies?
Yeah. Maybe also you can respond.
Yes, that's a very interesting question, actually. In my opinion, and from what I see in my country, the answer will not be like, forget this media and choose to follow another media that is more progressive. They will be negative on that. What would be the solution on that? Would be making sure that refugees and immigrants are living among the citizens. So, like with the everyday meeting with each other, they understand that they make it easier for them and less fear, having less fear of unknown, of something that they haven't seen before. So that would be the answer from my end, I would say.
That's again our Dutch saying, right? The unknown makes unloved.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
It's actually a good one. It was yours, right? Yeah. Yeah. That's final remarks on the last question. No, I think he did well, right? Okay.
well.
I would like to thank you as my wonderful panel. Give them a warm hand.
Thank you.
So we have a very, very special performance right now. I don't know actually if we have to remove some of the chairs here. We will now have a dance performance. And the dance performance is by Ahmad Judah. He is a Dutch dancer and choreographer. He was born in 1990 in Yarmouk camp, Damascus, as a stateless refugee. And since his childhood, it was his dream to become a dancer. He graduated from the Higher Institute for Dramatic Arts in Damascus. And during the war in Syria, he experienced life-threatening situations. His home was destroyed, and he lost 5 family members. And because of his dance activities, he also received threats from extremists. As a response, he had the words "dance or die" tattooed in his neck, the spot where a blade would fall in the case of a decapitation. To give up dancing was not an option for Ahmad. In 2016, the Dutch national TV broadcasted a performance by Ahmed dancing at the Roman Theatre in Palmyra, which you know was later destroyed. And touched by his dance, the Dutch National Ballet installed a special fund, the Dance for Peace Fund, that brought him to Amsterdam in October 2016. And since 2017, he has been contributing to events that raise awareness for the situation of refugees. I would like to ask you to give him a warm hand and enjoy the dance performance by Ahmad Judah.
My name is Natalie. I am Ukrainian. I live in Kharkov. Used to live in Kharkov. I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning because it's really big sounds outside my window, firework or somewhere, and I understand it's not firework. It was very dangerous for my child, and that's why I take him and my mother, and we came here more than 1 week ago. My sister buy us a ticket to plane, and we came here.
Escaping war. In the last weeks, millions of people did so. Some arrived here in Brussels by car, bus or taxi as they could. Searching for a safe haven, fleeing shelling and Russian artillery, people now have to wait in line.
I'm from Ukraine, from Kyiv, exactly. From Kyiv, then we have lived in the village named Usherkovs, but it's too scary. We decided to go here.
It was so hard to join here, to get to this country. Can you tell me what you're doing here?
I'm waiting for registration for me and my two children and for my sister. What I need about this registration is a school for my children because they so confused of all of the situation.
With the Russian aggression on Ukraine, neighboring countries opened their borders. Then, in a historic gesture, the EU granted immediate protection and working rights to Ukrainians, activating the Temporary Protection Directive. In other words, the EU opened its arms.
It's good that we activated the so-called Temporary Protection Directive, so people are allowed to come. The children are allowed to go to school, the adults are allowed to look for work, but you don't need this asylum procedure, at least for 1 year. It can be prolonged, and then we have to see how the situation develops.
Beyond the much-needed immediate response of the European Union and the Member States, it's at a grassroots level that ordinary citizens throughout Europe opened their hearts and their homes to people fleeing Ukraine. They helped by volunteering, providing a roof over people's heads, making generous donations, sending first aid products. A resident of Poznan in Poland, Mikołaj, stepped up early on.
We decided to buy things that we need, like first of all was clothes, medicines, stuff for soldiers, blankets, sleeping bags, flashlights, phones, and stuff like that. We didn't even think about it, taking any bulletproof vests or helmets. We just went in and went a bit further to Lviv. When we actually went there, it happened and people were actually thanking me because no one was bringing stuff inside the Ukraine. Everything was stopping on the European Union border. Mostly they were super surprised, plus thanking me, giving me hugs. And then the last round is with people who are bringing into the Poland, usually my hometown, which is Poznan. I'm focusing on getting people job, place to stay, and all the necessary things they need. I decided to help because I thought that helping makes us human beings. It was just a quick thing in my brain with my ADHD, which actually helps with that kind of stuff, so it worked.
This is an unprecedented situation, not seen since the Second World War in Europe. With a humanitarian situation worsening by the hour in Ukraine, most refugees have fled to Hungary, Moldova, Romania and Slovakia, with Poland bearing the brunt of the crisis. Poland and Moldova say they have already reached full capacity. Will there be others in the same scenario? In Belgium, authorities seem to have reacted quickly, but there's still a lot to do.
Demain, si la Belgique va avoir 400-500 000, on va les envoyer en France ou en Espagne. Donc, ils vont continuer à tourner et les gens n'obtiennent pas de statut. On leur promet de statut, mais pour avoir le statut, il faut entrer. Mais entre-temps, ils n'ont aucun soutien. Ils n'entrent pas dans les systèmes de soins de santé, les systèmes sociaux, tant qu'ils ne sont pas leurs documents.
The early steps in the integration process are crucial. But while we are still in the midst of a pandemic, are governments prepared to offer the support people need?
Of course, we will need money. Our communities, local levels have to be prepared for schools and other infrastructures. And that's something where member states have to offer things, but also the Commission is ready to use all the funding that has not been used is still there from the army, from the cohesion funds, and also to need some flexibility measures, so to ensure member states get the support they need.
Now we have to go on another step also to make sure that on European level we will have a solidaric and also coherent approach, because we can tackle this much better together than just to leave it to some member state. And all this has to be done in a coordinated way. And we also have to make sure that we don't have now new models of exploitation of these people that come in a desperate situation, not in a very good bargaining position maybe on a labor market, maybe also lacking language skills. This is something we need to address, and this will be the new level of help and support that is needed.
La movilización y los gestos de solidaridad con los refugiados no solo deben de mantenerse mientras dura la guerra, sino que debe conducirnos a un nuevo pacto de migración y asilo que ya no puede esperar más.
Is this a turning point for Europe's asylum policy? How will what's happened in Ukraine affect the debate and the policies in the Pact on Asylum and Migration that the European Parliament is currently working on. The countries today welcoming refugees with open arms, like Hungary, Poland and the Czech Republic, were the first ones to reject the principles of solidarity when the European Commission presented draft laws on sharing responsibility in 2020. Long before that, some governments steered a hostile anti-migrant narrative for political gains. Under the new laws, the Temporary Protection Directive would be replaced by a crisis regulation. This would make sure the EU is prepared when there are large influxes of refugees and would guarantee no country is left alone to deal with the consequences.
We need to keep true and faithful to our standard so that we provide humanitarian assistance for Ukrainians fleeing the war, for sure, but also other human beings which are not to be neglected or discriminated against. The way we treat Ukrainians must be extended to other situations which are comparable. People fleeing from conflict zones, from wars. It is the case of Syrians. It is the case of Iraqis. It is the case of Afghans. It is the case of Eritreans. They should be treated likewise. And I only hope that this momentum will be brought precisely to raise awareness as to what solidarity really means in the European ideal.
If you look at Poland, if you look at Romania, what people did there is just fantastic. But we cannot leave these countries alone because we can already see that mayors say, sorry, we did everything we could, but we need more help.
I really love my country. We have a very, very beautiful town. I live in the center of the city, and now I watch the videos and photos from Kharkiv, and it's
moved by the performance of Ahmad. Before we go to our panel discussion, I'd like to go to the audience. If someone with a microphone walking around as well. Yeah. We've heard quite some things so far, recommendations, ideas. What new insights did you get so far? Let me ask. Also, maybe the people who are at the round table, what new things did you hear? Could you share them with me? Maybe you who came up with the wonderful quote, the Dutch quote, unloved makes, no, unknown makes unloved.
Yeah, well, I think I was more negative before. Before I thought it was a hard border. EU is more like keep everything inside and everything outside. And it's not as negative as I thought it was. And that makes me very happy because I think we can only grow stronger when we do it together.
Yeah, you actually gain a little bit of hope.
Yeah,
so far.
exactly.
That's good, right? Yeah. Other insights so far? Or maybe you just want to say, I really enjoyed the dance. Absolutely. It was beautiful, wasn't it? Yeah. You want more? Yeah, I can imagine, yeah. Other ideas or insights you want to share with me? Yes. Mark, wasn't it?
Indeed.
Oh, I remember. I get to know all of you at the end of the conference.
Yeah, what really surprised me was that I went into this conference thinking about migration as mostly consisting of refugees, not thinking about other ways in which a person would migrate for their job, for family affairs, for other things. So that is something that really caught my mind.
Yeah. And you think maybe many other people just think of migration, oh, it's with
absolutely,
yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for your insight. Yeah. Maybe someone else wants to share an insight. Everyone's looking at me like, don't point at me. Here in the front, maybe you want to share an insight with me? Can be anything. Yeah, you need a microphone. What are your thoughts?
I wasn't really going to say anything, but what I'm very happy with is that the idea of and changing the Dublin agreements and everything around that is getting more and more ground in Europe, because I really think that's what we need. And I'm also very happy that more and more people, we've been speaking about it a long time, that the narrative should change, that we should never speak about illegal migration, but that we speak about legal pathways and migration in a broad sense. So I'm really hopeful as well.
Yeah. This changing the narrative is really one important lesson, right, today, to change the words we use and also inform people of facts. For instance, the fact that what Leo Lucassen mentioned earlier, that we have like a steady 4% of the people that migrate, was it 4%? And now it's 4.2%. So the whole idea of, oh, it's really increasing or going in one direction is false. Yeah. I'm going to introduce already my panel, because they're all mic'd up almost, I guess. That's why I'm talking to you in the first place. You noticed already? We're going to a panel in a couple of minutes, because we talked about the European perspective, but we're also going to talk about the Dutch perspective and the local perspective. I would like to invite to the stage for our panel discussion 4 panelists. So I need to stand here, actually. I can't even sit. No, that's okay. Oh, we have 5. Wow. Kati Piri, who is member of the Dutch House of Representatives for the PvdA. I think she's getting a mic. Mohamed, I see you're already mic'd up, so come here, Mohamed Badran. He's founder of Syrian Volunteers Netherlands and social designer at Open Embassy. And while we're here, and then I introduce the other panelists, what does Open Embassy do?
Can you hear me, right?
Yes.
So Open Embassy is an organization that started in 2015 as a help desk when the whole refugee situation started here in the Netherlands, but also in Europe. And the idea was we started as a help desk to basically just answer the questions from all the newcomers that they have about the system, about the access to work, access to education, access to to the Dutch society. And then from that help desk, right now we grow. The help desk still exists. We still answer the questions. So people come to us with their questions. So that's also we monitor, all the issues that they face on the daily basis. But what we also do, we right now provide support for newcomers on the individual level for complex cases in the different municipalities. We try to go the way through with them through the system. We try to understand how the system operates, and then from that knowledge, we try to work with municipalities, with policymakers to advise them on improving the system, basically.
It's great. I think it's very necessary that someone does it. Yeah, right. Yeah, you can applaud him. Yeah. Kati Piri, I already introduced you, so please join us, Member of Parliament for the PvdA. Give her a warm hand. And a former member of the European Parliament, of course. Yes, so it's a reunion for you, right? Here,
it's great to see many friends again.
It's a lot of hugging and so on. Yeah.
Yes.
What are you working on when it comes to migration right now in Parliament? What's at the table?
Well, obviously in the national parliament now all the discussions are mainly about receiving Ukrainian refugees, obviously also in this country, in the Netherlands. Where we already had quite some challenges when it comes to decent housing for refugees in general. That is one of the topics. And the other topic is we have a migration system which, because of bad political choices, got so stuck that people, even when they have, I'm sorry, I didn't speak English for a year or something, so it's a bit rusty, but it will come. Even when they have finally received their status, that they are allowed to stay in the Netherlands, they can work or study, they're still stuck in asylum centers because of, the bad political choices that were made in the last couple of years.
Thank you for this introduction. You mentioned Ukraine already. We're also very proud to have you here on our side, Natalia Kot. Give her a warm hand. She is the coordinator of the SD platform, the S&D partner in Ukraine, and co-founder of Women's Lobby but now also a Ukrainian refugee in the Netherlands. Can I start with asking, how are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm so sorry about my English. So
No, don't apologize.
I used that one already.
No.
Yeah.
So for me, it's interpreter from Russian. My speech will be in Russian, if it's possible, because I'm nervous.
Of course.
So I ask you.
I guess I need one as well then.
Yeah. One for me. Thank you.
Thank you. To the floor as well. A professor of global history, global migration history, an expert on migration, and director of the International Institute for Social History. Thank you, Leo, for joining us. We will now put this on, and I'll ask a question to Natalia. I guess, is it on?
Okay. Вы знаете, я одна.
I'm one of those 42 million people who, on the 24th of February, lived and used to live in an independent state, and my two daughters were born in the capital of the independent state. They were citizens of Ukraine, and on the 24th of February, I woke up to hear what my husband was saying. He said, wake up, we're being bombed in Kiev. We used to live in Kiev. I thought he was joking, and then I opened my phone and I saw a message from my mother. My mother in 2014 moved from occupied Lugansk, and then she wrote to me, daughter, I wish you are brave. When they talk about being brave, it always tells us that something bad is going to happen. But so it's my third week in the Netherlands. I traveled 2,000 kilometers. I have two daughters, 11 years old and 15 months old. So they traveled 2,000 kilometers. We used to sleep in Poland in sports venues for 4 nights. We spent in a sports venue. We got 3 beds behind a curtain. The Netherlands, people in the Netherlands welcomed us. Was very warm welcome, and we're so grateful to them. And I'm talking about women. 90% of refugees are women. Our men are staying back in Ukraine. Our husbands, fathers, brothers, adult sons, they are fighting there. One of my girlfriends was asked recently, everything is nice in Kiev. You can go back. And my friend said, yeah, it's good. It's been good for the last 2 hours. So, and we're talking here about the war, about bombings. I watched the Dutch television. They are talking about crisis, about conflict. No, it's not crisis. It's not a conflict. It's a war. It's a war on Ukraine. There are men, women, people who were not able to travel, people with sick parents, with small children. I'm sure you've seen these images, but when we're sitting here in a very comfortable country that cares about its people, it's very hard to imagine what's happening in my city, in my country where my daughters were born. We are relaxed here. My daughters can sleep at night. We were welcome in Overijssel. We live in a very nice house. 85 women and children were taken there. So the youngest child is just 4 months old. So young baby and mother are here and their father is back in Ukraine. So about challenges, I can talk later if you have questions later.
What do you need right now in the Netherlands? What can we learn from your experience to improve how we deal with a refugee like you?
Thank you.
I was surprised, nicely surprised, by hospitality of Dutch women and men. They are trying to do everything to help us. We have roof over our head, we have clothes, we have all necessary for our personal hygiene, we have food, but we face challenges. Why? Because we want to work. Ukrainian women are not used to allowances, to benefits. They want to work. Before the war, I used to work, whereas my husband had a paternal leave. In Ukraine, it's not a usual thing. It might be a usual thing here. Now I cannot work. I have a very small child. She's a year old. The kindergartens are private in the Netherlands. I cannot pay the private kindergartens. I have certificate, I have diploma, I'm a teacher of Ukrainian language, but I cannot work here. My diploma is not recognized. I have also a bachelor degree in political sciences, but again, I'm not able to work here because I don't know Dutch language. So we can't go and find jobs because we don't have kindergartens for little children. And we are waiting for language courses. We've been waiting for a long time. Unfortunately, we don't know English well. That's why I'm talking Russian here. Another challenge for us is schooling for our children. It's a sensitive issue. My daughter follows online school in Ukraine. She wants to integrate in local society here because we don't know when we're going back. We don't know when we're going back. Some cities like Mariupol and Chernigov were just erased, and our women don't know when they can go back. So the main challenges for us are kindergartens, childcare, and work for us. We do not wish to get allowances and benefits from nationals of the European Union, but we do need your support to get childcare and to get work.
I think you made very clear what you're going through and what you experience in the Netherlands and how we could help you. May I ask Kati Piri first to respond?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to hear that you feel welcome. Because I think we all understand that if you come from the horrible situation of a war that is happening so close, so nearby, that the only thing that can give you a little bit of comfort here, in a place where you don't know people, is when people welcome you. And I always say a good integration starts with a warm welcome. And I think that's the way that in this country, in all European countries, we should deal with those people who didn't choose to leave their country, but who are forced to leave their country. So I'm happy to hear that. I also recognize very much the challenges that we have in the Netherlands, where we have, at least at the political level, in general, not on Ukraine, but in general, I would say a very right-wing, hard line when it comes to migration and receiving refugees. Of course, we have seen in more places that when it comes to welcoming Ukrainians, I would say in the Netherlands, with the exception of one party, all parties in the Dutch parliament, and we have many, we have 19 or 20, I even lost count.
20?
Yeah, 20 recently, say they are welcome. The challenge I think we have is that the Dutch government is, on the one hand, hoping, and I think we all hope, that it will be temporary protection that has to be given. But what I always say, that even if it will be temporary, you will have to be able, Ukrainians will have to be able to continue their life while being in the Netherlands. So people hoping perhaps in 1 or 2 years you can go back, that means you need to be able and be facilitated to work. Younger people above 18 who were studying in Ukraine need to be able to continue their studies in Holland. Why would your life have to stop when coming to another country, waiting for the war to go over? I think we should facilitate the continuation of life. That is happening way too slowly. And on the other hand, I think we must also be realistic, like you said yourself. We need to start integration from day one. And we all hope that your country, because we all see how brave the Ukrainians are fighting, and we all hope, of course, that you will have the independent, secure European future for Ukraine. But in case that might take a longer time, you need to be able to learn the Dutch language here from day one. Your children need to be able to go to daycare and to schooling. And I think the Dutch government somehow, so there's a lot of stress about providing the first reception, meaning mainly a roof above your table, making sure there is something on healthcare, but it's a very short-term vision.
Yeah. Leo, Lucas?
Yeah, well, I fully endorse everything that Kati Piri just said. And I think it just to follow up on her argument, I think it confronts us with a reluctance in the integration process, especially of refugees.
Isn't it the same for all kinds of migrants? Is there a difference?
Sorry?
Isn't it the same for all kinds of migrants?
No, well, especially for refugees, I think, because, and this is something that, well, already started in the late 80s. A reluctance because, and especially the ministry that is responsible for, let's say, admittance of immigrants, especially also refugees, the Ministry of Justice, there is a very strong idea that if your integration process is too smooth, more will come. So there is a kind of idea that you should not, let's say, develop a too well-functioning integration process for refugees, because that might, let's say, prevent others to think, well, the Netherlands, that seems to be a nice place. Yeah. And this, of course, is very counterproductive, because this means, and especially in the 1990s, when the Netherlands had even more asylum seekers than in the last 10 years, people were let's say, isolated for years in asylum centers, etc., before they even were allowed to work, to get their life back on feet. And I think this is, so it is a heritage that we are, and I think that's what Kati Piri also says, this is the heritage we are stuck with. And this could be a very good moment to turn that around. Mm-hmm. And I think there was already one moment in 2015-16, I remember that Lodewijk Asscher asked me to talk with him about, and there was this moment from day one. That was the spirit. He was then Minister of Social Affairs, and there was a real moment, and let's do it differently. Mm-hmm. But with the new government, this has disappeared again. So let's slit this moment. So maybe,
Mohammed, can I ask you, because you're working for Open Embassy and you're also advising how to improve the integration process, right? Are they listening?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, it's it's very complex. I mean, we can't say if they are actually listening and changing the policies. When it comes especially to integration, and when I hear also the story, it's also very recognizable. I mean, when I arrived in 2013 as a refugee, I think we had the same issues. We faced the same issues of access. So integration shouldn't be about, how you could assimilate in the Dutch society, but it could be just simply providing access to education, providing access to work, and keep the autonomy, the agency of the people, so that they can move freely and then take ownership back of their lives. I will share one story, one case, maybe two, but one, which is actually a case of my mother. She came here also after I came. She came with my father as in a family reunion. She used to work as a pharmacist in Syria. She is high educated. She arrived here. Now, after 8 years, I think, we are living in the Netherlands. She's still, her diploma is not recognized. Yeah. She is not working. She speaks fluently Dutch. We can't find a job that fits her, even though she has an experience of 20 years of working as a pharmacist.
Yeah, it makes you angry, I guess.
Yeah, and it's and the other way around. If you look at the shortage that we have in the health sector,
yeah,
and there's something so institutionalized in the system that we need to change deeply. And we need to work on that. I mean, if we are talking about resetting the rules of migration, we need to think about how we are looking from the needs of the host society, not to put a lot of rules on integration, but instead just let the society take over and welcome the people, and then from their needs match with how they can further, these people can contribute immediately to the society, yeah, without putting any obstacles that it's not necessary.
Yeah. You have a second one, or is it, because otherwise I'm going to ask Kati Piri, how can we deal with this? Do we need policies? Do we need community initiatives? Do we need hospitals to take an initiative? What should we do?
Well, I think, to be honest, at the grassroots level, there are so many initiatives. That's not the problem. I remember also in what we see, I know you said in 2013, what we see as the big Syrian crisis was for us, obviously in Syria is still a crisis since 2011, was 2015, 2016, when so many people fled Syria. And I remember also back then, we had so many people volunteering. 3 times more volunteers than there were refugees. I remember one mayor from, he happens to be a social democrat, from Leiden, who said, I have to say no to the volunteers because, the refugees also only have 24 hours. And they need to rest sometimes, they can't always go on all the activities. So that is, I think, the very nice part. When it comes to grassroots organization, look at even, also in a country where I was born, in Hungary, at grassroots level, what is happening now to receive, for instance, people from Ukraine. On the other hand, obviously there are political choices to be made, and it does matter whether you have a more conservative, right-wing, meaning a more restrictive government when it comes to migration, or whether you have a more progressive one. Obviously, that's one thing. In Holland, I would say, and that is, I think, comes very close to you, because this problem you are describing would not suddenly be resolved when the Social Democrats would come to power, right? So we also have some bureaucracy, how we see the state, how we don't look at the individual and what that person needs in order to function in this society. I mean, your mother should have been, accompanied with a training to make sure that, she can get the extra papers needed in these 8 years in order to fully contribute to the society where she is living now. And in that respect, I recognize sometimes, the discussions in the European Parliament, also as legislators, we are looking at the big picture with legislation, and on the ground, it doesn't always help the people who need a very person-based approach. And I think that's the lesson also in these big crises. You need to be innovative. You need to be, not always everything according to the rules, and that's very difficult for Dutch people.
Yeah. Leo?
Yeah, I think what is at the basis is that we have to change also the rhetoric and the narrative. And I think it has been said before, earlier on, that the idea that migration is a burden or a threat, instead of seeing it as an asset, not only for, let's say, our society, but also for the people who come. And I think if you look at it that way, and there are very sound reasons to do so, also economically, in the somewhat longer run, if you see, let's say, how the shortages at the labor market that have been addressed already, so this is the mind switch that we need, and also a political switch, and that will then translate into much more accommodating policies that we need. And exactly what Kati Piri said, at the local level, it always strikes me if I give lectures in cities and mostly in cities in the Netherlands, and whatever political color of the mayor or the alderman, they mostly are very positive. They want to help. Also VVD, PvdA, it doesn't really matter what their affiliation is. But at the local level, it's so different from, let's say, the rhetorics at let's say, at the national level, which I think are very much a hostage to populist voices. And there are very good examples of a more accommodating policy and how it works. And one of the best examples I know is Israel. You may think about Israel what you like, but they had an absolutely effective integration model after World War II in drawing people from Lithuania to Morocco who all came together with very different linguistic and cultural backgrounds, yes, united in a religion, but they all had to learn Hebrew. They all had to accommodate to a very different country. But this was, of course, a very positive, accommodating integration policy. And the same is a little bit true for the Aussiedler from Russia in the 1990s in Germany. So basically Russians, but they with German roots. Yeah. But let's say if you look at the policy, how they were integrated into German society, compared to people from Afghanistan, from Iran, from Iraq, totally different tracks, yeah. And different investments.
Yeah, so maybe what you experience at the local level, if we do that on the national level, we could also change a lot. Yeah. Some last remarks by all of you, and then we have to close off the panel session already. I'm already lost track of time. Mohammed, is there something you'd like to advise, recommend, say to the audience?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, to sum up, I think the government shouldn't work to control neither integration or migration at every step. It shouldn't. I don't think that that's the task where the government should intervene. I think the government should let that to the host society, for the welcoming society, to take that leadership in welcoming the people. The narrative is very important, and I think all politicians who are in the parliaments, they should make sure that whenever certain narrative is being formed, that it's false narrative, that needs to be checked, and that needs to be held accountable for other politicians. And I think that's what we need to really to look back again about who are these people, they are at the end, they are humans, they are, we need to go back to our human values, yeah. And I think that's where the narrative should be around, and that's what, I think that needs to be happen.
Yeah, your mom is a pharmacist and she can contribute to our society. Yeah. Kati?
Well, sometimes I think we should go back decades. Because sometimes, decades ago, it was easier to integrate in the Netherlands than it is today. The Netherlands was much poorer in the time when my father came here as a refugee from Hungary. And it is possible in this country, because of how this country is organized, that the daughter of a refugee is now a member first of the European Parliament and now of the national parliament. It is possible. When he came here, he was given the right to study at the University of Utrecht, and until the end of his life, he stayed in the Netherlands and he was teaching history. And he inspired his students, almost exclusively Dutch in Gouda, also by Dutch origin, who always remembered the history teacher they had who used to be a refugee. And when my father died, I received so many emails of his former students telling us some of them work now for Amnesty, some of them went to politics, all different directions, but all remembering that history teacher and the refugee history that he brought with him. And I think, you know, sometimes we have all these complicated systems, but there is a willingness, also in this country, to receive people fleeing for war. And we should make use of that willingness of that local society to integrate better, because I would not want to think of this country, how it would look like without migrants and without refugees who once came here. Well, only look at the mayor of this city, who came to this country, I believe, when he was 16 from Morocco, and I dare to make a bet that he's the most popular mayor of the Netherlands. So let's use the good examples. Let's use the good examples. Yeah.
Thank you, Kati. Leo, some final words?
Yeah, very briefly, but again, I think also Kati and Mohammed have formulated it very well. Make also use of the human capital of these people. I mean, if you put yourself in their position and we had to flee to Syria or to Ukraine, what we wanted to do is to become, to get autonomy of our lives as soon as possible, and also that the skills we have, we can use. I mean, and that is something we have a very bad record over the last 20, 30 years. And this, even if you hate refugees, it's stupid, because it only costs more money. I mean, that should not be, of course, be the argument.
Yeah,
the argument is that they are fellow human beings, and that you would want them to set their lives as soon as possible on track, as you would want it for yourself.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, and I think many people forgot how migratory the Dutch were, how migratory the Europeans were. Between 1850 and 1914, 50 to 60 million Europeans left the continent to go to North and Southern America. And everyone thought this is normal behavior. Of course we can migrate.
Yeah.
But the migrants now, it's always the other. It's not us. And that's, of course, nonsense.
Yeah. Natalia, would you like to close off?
Thank you.
Yeah. Do it. You're good at it.
Okay, thank you. I think a lot of people from Ukraine and also from Syria, we are active and we want to help us, and we ask you to help us to help for us. And I'm sure that it will be better, nothing for us without us. And we are ready. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Natalia Kotz, Leo Lucas, Kati Piri, and Mohammed Badren. Yeah, you can take a seat. Yeah, you're free to go. We're going to close off. First, since we had three welcome words, three words of welcome, we're also going to do two ways of saying goodbye. And the first of them is a video message by Gaby Bischoff, the S&D Vice President for Migration and Asylum, and she has prepared some closing remarks in a video. And then, last but not least, Thijs Reute, member of the European Parliament, will say some really final words. So enjoy the video, and then Thijs, the floor is yours.
You had a very interesting conference today discussing the important issue of migration in regards of the conference on the future of Europe. We as S&D Group approach this conference with quite an optimistic view to use it to change European policies, to address the deficiencies, and to make sure that we will have a democratic, a social Europe, and a Europe that is more capable to act. And I think especially in the area of migration, we need a lot of this capacity. And I'm sure that you discussed the concrete proposals that the 800 citizens that were selected proposed and that were discussed in the working group. And I know very much that really our colleague Mark and Niels that presented these proposals did give good inspirations about how the work was done in this conference and what are the possible proposals that will come out of this conference. And our position here as S&D Group is very clear. And this is why we very much support the proposal to have new rules and responding really to the principle of European solidarity and the fair sharing of responsibility, especially in the field of asylum and migration. And I'm sure you discussed a lot of how this can be and should be concretely done. Because what we have seen in the last years is that the Parliament came up with strong joint positions. They could agree on joint proposals how asylum and migration policy could be done more solidaric and fairer, but it was in the Council where there was such a blockage that things didn't move. So hopefully this conference helps to unblock it, especially also in this field of migration. And unfortunately, I cannot be there because I would have loved to participate, also to see Kati Piri again and to see from this European perspective how you will bring it to the national level, and so that we merge and come up with a joint progressive position, independent if you come from the European Parliament, from a national parliament, from a regional parliament, from an NGO, from the social partners. So I'm looking forward to hear the results of your conference, and I thank you for your interest. And together we are a strong progressive force for a better and fairer migration and asylum policy in Europe. Thank you.
I'm speeding up things because then we can also get a drink together. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you Evelyn for excellent moderation, and thanks to the S&D staff and everyone who worked to make this possible. It was great to do this also with two of my colleagues in the European Parliament and all the other guests, of course. Almost day in, day out, we speak about asylum and migration policies in the European Parliament and also in the national parliaments. And yes, Anna is right. Anna was right at the beginning of this event. We need to connect also the different disciplines. But that lack of progress, that can be so frustrating. And that is ever the more frustrating because this is about real people. And it should be also the debate of these people, the people it is really about, the refugees themselves, the volunteers, our communities. And an evening like this shows that if we sit down together as citizens, the discussion is much less polarized than you might think when you watch TV or social media. So the response to this gruesome war in Ukraine is heartwarming. Citizens opened their arms, opened their doors. And it's good to have you with us, Natalia, despite the dire situation that caused you to be here. But now, even the leaders of our governments are showing that this horrible war demonstrates that they demonstrate themselves that it is possible to do it differently. And that makes me, together with you, dare to dream a little. And we've heard today from all our speakers, and I will not repeat all the ideas that we've heard, but we also heard the ideas. The round table, the citizens' round table, the panel, it's too much to sum it up. But what I take away from today is inspiration. Words matter. Dehumanizing vocabulary should be banned. And also what Kati said, facilitating continuation of life. I think that is the essence. And the concrete points of Anna Teron, we take them with us. And I'm ever more convinced that we can achieve a lot in the months and the years ahead, but we are in a hurry. Let me thank you all once more for your valuable contribution. And let's stay in touch, because this is not the end of this debate. And you need to keep on inspiring us with your ideas and keep us sharp. Migration is of all times. How we deal with it defines our humanity. Let's change the rules on migration together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thijs Reute, MEP, and of course the host of this event. Yes, we're now ready to have a short reception. We have some drinks, so please feel free to join us, and